Okay, so let's do some more styling. Um, First of all, I want to go ahead and take care of some of the other things. We'll probably come back to the link buttons maybe last, but let's take care of all this other stuff. So first things first, we got the size on this H1. I'm not entirely happy though with like how tight everything is up here. So one thing I think I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll give it a little bit of a margin. So let's do a top and bottom margin. I know we originally got rid of all the margins, but one of the things that I really do like is to reset everything so I can be very explicit. So let's say margin, and then I'm just going to worry about the top and bottom for right now. So let's do the top as being, I don't know, let's say maybe 0.25 em or something like that. And that'll be all the way around actually, unless we come over here and say either 0 or auto. I think that what I'd like to do is probably just say auto for the left and right, and then we'll just leave it like that. And so that way it's not actually going to do anything weird with the left and right on small screens. So so now we have a little bit of space in between those. The other thing that I can go ahead and do is I can come down here to this aside down below, and I can also do some kind of styling on it. I think I'd like for it to also have the small cap variant. So if you remember, what we had for that was font, and then if you wanted to go to variant, right, start to type V, you could choose small caps from the list. And then I think that I kind of like the way that that looks. You might feel that it's a little bit too small, and if you do feel that it is too small, then you could also adjust the scale of it a little bit. So let's actually say font size, and I'll try something like, I don't know, first of all let's just try 1 em, and then you see that it doesn't really change very much. So oops, not 11 em. Let's try 1.1, and that might be a little bit better for what I want. All right, so it's demoted under the H1, but it still has weight, it still looks important, and I think it looks kind of nice. And the other thing too that I'm probably going to want is a little bit of space in between it on the bottom and those links. So I can either do a margin or I could do padding. I think I'll do a margin. And we'll just do longhand in this case. We can say margin bottom. And then that way I don't have to adjust anything else intentionally. So I can say margin bottom, let's just say, let's try 0.5 em or something like that. And like I said, the reason I'm using ems is because I am dealing with text, and so at least it'll be consistent with the scale of the text and stuff, so it's reliable. So I think I like the way that that looks up at the top. The one thing I think I might not like is I might want the circle around this picture up here on that IMG and the banner. I might kind of like for that to be, I think I might like for that to be a little bit smaller, like maybe where it says border solid 3 pixels. Let's see what 2 pixels looks like. And the other thing too is that I might not want it being as small as 130. I might want it to be only as small as 150. Maybe that's as small as I ever want it to be. Okay, so if I click off of that, I can start to see that. And I think I like that slightly smaller rule around it just a little bit better. And lastly, if I wanted to make the border, or excuse me, the box shadow as strong as the box shadows around these other areas, remember how we added the spread? I could go ahead and add a 2 pixel spread, and it makes it a little bit more significant so that it makes it a little bit darker. You could also, if if you're on some dark background and you wanted to increase the shadow, you could also increase the opacity a little bit. So mine's 0.5, you could take it up to 0.6 or something like that. So anyway, I think I might leave mine at 0.5 though. Now the other thing too that you can do is if I wanted some of this text up here to have a little bit more weight, like it pops out, I could also add a text shadow, sort of like this box shadow up here. So let's go back up here where we've got our H1 rule and our aside rule, and let's do that. So a text shadow is actually text dash shadow. All right. And if you wanted to read more about this, there's a really great website, by the way. This is for box shadow, but anyway, there's a great website called css-tricks.com, and I really recommend that you guys check this out. It's good because it has, Here, I'll open this up a little bit. It has a nice search box. So if we wanted, you wanted to look up anything you're trying to figure out how to do, it's got a really good search tool. So if you looked up text shadow because you're not sure what to call it, you're probably going to find really good relevant hits for that. And you see right here, boom, text shadow. And then there's another text shadow article. So there are a lot of different ones. So you can click on it and see like maybe how you can format it, for instance. You can see the different ways that you can apply multiple text shadows. Let's just do something simple right now, and let's just apply one text shadow. So I'm just going to copy this, right? And this is what you can do if you're trying to test stuff out like this, all right? And let's put this like that and come back to our page. And if you wanted to apply a text shadow to this H1, like we can just paste that, and we can tell it, instead of being 1 pixel, 1 pixel, 1 pixel, and it's actually kind of hard to see, like unless you click off of it. I don't know if you can see that from where you are on the screen, but I think I might like it to be a little bit heavier. And I don't think that I'm going to have it be offset horizontally in either direction. I think I still want to use 0 for that first offset, and then the second offset, let's do like maybe 2 pixels, and then this is the blur, so let's do like 5 pixel blur, and you could leave it at the 0, 0, 0 if you want, and that blur might be a little bit heavy, so let's take it down to like maybe a 4 pixel blur. And then the other thing that I would probably do is I would probably change this to an Rgba value instead of black. So I'm going to type Rgba, and then I'll put my 2 parentheses and cursor back over, and remember red, green, blue, alpha. So I do for red 0 because I want black. Okay, so remember black is for red, green, blue, it's 0, 0, 0. Okay, so 0, 0, 0, 0, that's red, green, and blue, and then I need comma, and then for alpha I could do like maybe 0.7 for 70% or something like that. And it might be kind of hard to see unless you click off of it somewhere, right? And so you can kind of see it a little bit better. And if I like that, okay, if I like it, what I could do is I could take this, I can copy it, right? And I can come down here and I can paste it on the aside rule as well. And then you can see that the aside now has a text shadow and it stands out a little bit, okay? So now the other thing is, if I wanted that same kind of text shadow on my other headings, I could do that as well. The other thing too that you want to be careful not to neglect too much is down here in the footer. And so I'm actually going to scroll down in my CSS down to the bottom where we've got footer. And remember, this is all text, so what we could do is we can just tell it to have a text align right so that it goes to the center. So we'll say text align, right? Not text align right, I'm sorry, text align center, right? And then that way everything stays centered. Don't forget to terminate. And then if I want, for instance, to make everything in the footer have a text shadow, I could go down here and I could paste that text shadow, and let's take a look at that bottom again. I actually, come to think of it, I kind of don't like this changing to white because it looks just like the white text just above it. So let's go back down there, and maybe we do want something kind of bright and obnoxious like yellow. So maybe I do want yellow. So let's go back here. I'm just going to type the word yellow actually. And we're probably fine using that. So I'll copy this and we'll paste it right there. And let's see how that looks. And that actually really does make it stand out a whole lot more, and I'm okay with that. And then up here, these are going to be different anyway because we don't want these to be underlined and stuff. They're going to be different, and I'll show you how to style those specifically. Let's just go ahead real quickly and address all of these margins and padding for the heading levels and the lists and paragraphs and block quotes and things like that. Okay, so let's just take them one by one. First of all, let's look at the H2s. I think what I'd like to do is just jump up here to the H2 rule, and let's just start playing around with this a little bit. And first thing I think I'd like to do is, let's see what it looks like with a rule underneath it, just sort of like what we just added. Let's do border, and we're just going to say bottom, because I don't really want to add a border on the left or right or anything like that. And let's say border bottom is 1 pixel. Let's say dotted. What the heck? Oops, dotted. And then let's give it a color. I don't know. Let's pick from our palette actually. Maybe let's see what this color looks like. I'm not sure that it'll be right, but let's just try it, see what happens. And come back over here. And as long as we click off of it, we'll be able to see it a little bit better. So let's get out of that. And you might notice that it has a weird contrast. That really might not work, especially because red and green are problematic for colorblind people. So that might not be the best choice. If we were to come back in here, let's say, and look somewhere in the blue range, that might be a better choice. I don't know. I'm just kind of playing around right now. I'm going to copy that into my clipboard, and we'll see how that looks over here. Let's try a different hexadecimal value, and that might be a little bit better. It still might be a little bit like a little too bright. So what I could do is I could keep on going back and forth like that, or the other option would be that I could change this to an Rgba value, and I can just lower the opacity, because on top of green, this sort of teal blue might be just fine, sort of lightly blended in. So what I can do is right click this, go to quick edit, and then if I click on Rgba, right, it actually gives me, like I said before, it gives me the actual RGB color. So I'll commit to that. And then what I'd need to do, at least at the time of me making this video, unless they update it, I need to actually add the A here, and I need to actually add comma and then the RGB value. So let's do like maybe 0.9. And then what I should be able to do is I should be able to right click on this, go to quick edit, and see now it should let me adjust the value of that with a slider so that I can make it more transparent. And it shows me the old value on the right and the new value on the left. So let's commit to that, and let's just see how that looks by clicking away from it. And that might be a little bit better, okay? And the other thing too is that I think I want it to be a little bit further away from the text. All right, I could add that as a margin. Let's show you what happens when I do that, right? And just remember, the box model says that it goes element, padding, border, then margin. So if I add margin, which is what a lot of people are going to think, oh, that's what I should do. So let's just say we're doing margin bottom, margin dash bottom. You're going to see what happens. Let's do like maybe 0.5 em. Okay. And you'll notice that it pushed everything else away but not the rule. That's because, as I said before, box model goes element, which would be the words, right? Element, then padding, which we did not add, then border, then margin, right? So what we did was we added everything as the margin that goes outside of that border. So what we could also do instead is change the word margin here to the word padding, so that the padding is on the bottom, and then you see that it adds space in between the text and the actual rule. And that might be a little bit too much space. Let's see what happens if we do it as a 0.25 em. That might be a little bit better. You could even maybe mess around with it and make it 0.3. And you know, sometimes those little bitty like half, you know, like quarter decimal places, they actually make a difference sometimes, or even tenths of a decimal, so on. So I think I might be okay with that, and you can see how it looks all the way down the page, right? And then you can go ahead and do something similar with the H3. Actually, I think I do want to add, instead of adding a margin to the bottom of that H1, since we have multiple, not H1, this is an H2. Since we have multiple of these H3s, like here too, we probably want space on the top of all of them. So let's just add the space just to the tops of the H3s instead of adding space on the bottom margin of the H2. All right, so let's go to the H3 and we'll say margin, let's do margin top, right? And you could do margin top, margin bottom, however you want to do this. But let's just say margin top for now. I'll show you longhand way of doing it. And let's do this as maybe 0.25 and see how much that is. And then if you click off of it, you'll be able to see it a little bit better. And you know, that might look okay for you. You might want it a little bit closer to the line. I don't know. Let's see what happens if we do 1.5. That might be a little bit better. Okay, and so I'm just going to leave it there for the sake of time. I'm not going to fuss too much with it. And then you'll notice that here it's still a little bit close, but that's okay because I'm going to add additional space right underneath like these other elements as well. Okay, so let's look at what those elements are. And you'll see first of all that we have a paragraph. Most paragraphs are, you're going to want a little bit of extra space on the top and bottom. Not too much, but I'll go down here and I'll add a p tag. And let's say margin. And I'm going to do, for this, I'm going to do top and bottom and left and right. And I can say top and bottom is maybe 0.25 and then left and right would be auto, so that it doesn't automatically inset it. And so that's what we've got. And looking at that, you might go, okay, well, I think I want more space underneath my H3. So in that case, you could come up here to your H3. Oops, I forgot to terminate that. Under your H3, and we'll say margin. Actually, let's just do this. Let's say for margin, let's do margin all the way around for top and bottom, and then we'll say auto for left and right, and see what that does. And what you might look at that and and go, okay, well, it still isn't quite enough. So in this case, what we could do is we could do all 4 units all the way around. So for the top, maybe we could say that we wanted it 0.15 auto for the right. For the bottom, we could say 0.5 Let's just see what happens with that. And then auto for the left. And then you can see that all the way around for all, or not all the way around, but all down the page for the H3s, it pushes all the content, regardless of whether it's a paragraph or a list or whatever, a lot further away from it. And in that case, what you might go and think is, all right, well, maybe I don't want this to be so far away and differentiated. You could also get rid of that 0.5, and then you could come down here and maybe even make it a little further away, like 0.75. So it's almost a full M away, and then it starts to really differentiate itself from all of the other content. All right, and you can see how that is starting to come together a little bit better. Now, we have a paragraph style. Now we need to do our list items, our lists. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to inset all of my ULs and all of my OLs quite significantly, and so that we don't have to, worry about those things. And let's go down here, and we're going to add a rule for UL, and I'm going to make this a grouped selector. So UL, OL, and let's just start off with that. I'm not going to include the definition list in this. So let's say that we want the margin. Let's say that we want the margin for this to be on top and bottom, maybe 1M. And then on left and right, let's say that we want it to be like 3M or something. Okay, and you can see that how much it like insets it, and whether or not you like that, that's kind of up to you. Right, and so but if you wanted to click away from it, you can see how it looks without it being highlighted on the page. Okay, and I think that I might be okay with that. I think that that's probably not too bad. And then you can see also that it's going to affect what's up here. We'll deal with that in a minute. All right, and so this is pretty good. And if you want to also style the specific list items, you can do that as well. And you can also add padding, by the way, if you wanted to add padding. But anyway, I'm just going to add margins. And what I can do down here is for the list items, I can say LI. And if I wanted these to be tighter together or further apart, I could, you know, make them further apart. So if I wanted to do line spacing, or excuse me, not line spacing, I could do line spacing or line height, let's say, because that's what we had set before. Let's say that we want these even further apart. We could make them like 2M. I think the natural line spacing is to be 1.5, and that 1.5 might be a little bit too much, but like for a list, we might want them to be a little bit more significantly spaced apart. So that's really up to you. Like we might want to make this tighter. And if you remember, we did that up on the body so that it cascades to the entire page. So up here where I have a line height of 1.66, maybe let's see what that looks like as 1.5, or maybe even 1.3. And you can see that the paragraphs now are a little closer together in their line spacing. And you'd have to decide if that's too close, you know, maybe 1.4. But it's not as far apart as the way that the lists are. And then that way the lists are, you know, a little bit more offset and intentional looking, okay? So these are all the kinds of, you know, things that you would want to think about when you're doing this stuff. Also, this is a block quote right here. Block quotes are typically really different looking. And so let's make a rule for our block quotes. Okay, so we come down here in our general styling area, and let's make something for the block quote. And let's say for this that we give it a margin of 3M, maybe all the way around. That's a little bit too much. Maybe we'll do 2M for the top and bottom, and that still, you might still think it's a little bit much, but it's the same line height at least as the list items. The other thing that I think I'd like to do, and you might not like that it doesn't line up with this other stuff, so maybe we do want to keep it like that. You know, it's really up to you how you want to do it. I might even do it at like 2.5. Okay. And the other thing too that a lot of times I'll do with block quotes is I will make the font style right there. I will make it a lot of times italic, so that it really is set apart in a very significant different way. Okay, and then you can decide by clicking off of it, kind of look at it and see, all right, well, that's kind of a lot of space on top and bottom. Maybe that's a little bit too much. So maybe for the top and bottom, we'll set it at like 1.5 M, and that looks a little bit better. Okay. All right, and then you can come and style the definition lists as well, so that they look a little different if you want. I'm going to leave mine the same. I happen to like them like that. Okay, so I think really the main thing that I have left to do still is to style these as buttons that are in a horizontal list right here. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how to do that, and we're on the home stretch.